Welcome in, everybody, to Grind Time. I'm your host, Billy Muzio, and Dwain McFarland from PFF has joined me tonight, one of my favorite people in the industry. Dwain is also a high-stakes grinder. He's got, 3 finishes inside the top 5 at another high-stakes site. He's got a top 8 finish at another site. You probably know him from his utilization report and his activity on Twitter, posting just fire takes on a daily basis. Dwain, welcome to the show, buddy. Nice to have you back, and excited to draft with you tonight.
I feel honored. I'm drafting. I should be scared, actually. I'm drafting with the most accurate fantasy football draft ranker on the planet. It's you. I should just ask you what I should do at every pick.
It was hilarious. I wasn't even on Twitter in the morning yesterday. Jody messaged me. He's like, "Dude, congrats!" And I'm like, "Question mark? Like, what happened?" Right? And he sends me the Fantasy Pros tweet, and I'm like, "Oh snap! Really?" and I was like,
That's
"Oh,
awesome, dude!"
I was like, "This is pretty cool, right?" And then I'm downstairs. I'm making breakfast. I'm kind of gloating a little bit, I'm pouring my glass. Myself some champagne, and I'm drinking champagne in the morning. Yes, it's Thursday. I don't care, right? And, and my wife comes down. I said, "Honey, I don't know how else to say this, but I'm kind of a big deal today." And she goes, "Oh God, here we go. What happened?" and I tell her. She goes, "What does it mean?" She doesn't know about what this contest is or how big this contest is, right? She's just like, "Whatever. What's for breakfast?" And so I'm texting my friends. They'll understand this.
But see, that's how you can get away with this, because the key part you just said is she's willing to say what's for breakfast, because you're an awesome cook and you can make breakfast. My wife never asked me that. She's like,
valid
not
points.
Gonna make a good breakfast for me. I watched you, dude, when everybody was doing their nacho stuff. And everybody giving these takes, and you were like, "This is terrible." And I'm like, "I'm gonna see what Billy does here." And yeah, when I saw your nachos, I thought, well, no wonder he thought everybody else's sucked, because your nachos looked awesome.
Yeah, I was like, "What the hell are these? These aren't nachos. These are microwaved, college dorm food is what it was."
Yours looked really good, but I do have to say some looked really bad. So no offense to anyone that I'm talking about here, but good God, these nachos look. I definitely wouldn't take a picture. I'm not sure I would eat them, much less take a picture of them.
Yeah, it's. I'm trying to figure out the screen here. I'm having trouble trying to talk at the same time. Let's get us over here. Or no, we did this last time. It was better. No, we're gonna leave it here. Sorry, folks. I'm trying to get this all situated. You're talking, getting pulled up on the draft.
Hey, it's multitasking, man, on the fly. I feel you.
Yeah, and I apparently can't do it right now, and I'm sober. You'd think I. Oh, that's what it is. Okay, hold up. I shared the wrong screen. Okay. I swear, people, I've done this before. I have definitely streamed before, but we're gonna try this again. So share screen, Chrome tab. That's the one I need to share, and we're going to pull up here and throw ourselves aside. Okay, boom. And for
how do I tell this lady to stop telling me that I'm on the clock? I definitely have to do that.
Oh, right click
me, and I'm just gonna hear you're on the clock.
Yeah, right click the. Are you on Chrome?
Yeah.
Right click the tab at the top and just put mute site.
Okay.
We're implementing a sound button soon, but
got it.
For those who are streaming or with us tonight, I'm going to post the draft board inside the notes there on YouTube, so you can follow along, because it's kind of tiny here. I understand the struggle, so it is there now for you. Draft starts off with JT, Cooper Kupp. You take Christian McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson to the 3-hole, Jamar Chase to the 4-hole.
You're on
Eckler,
deck.
Diggs, Devontae Adams, Cook, and Swift. If you were at the 2-hole, would you have taken McCaffrey?
Yes, I would have.
How about the 1-hole?
CMC. I would consider him at the 1. I'm still taking JT at the 1, because that's pretty much where you have to take JT to get him. So, we do a lot of drafts, so I want some exposure to Jonathan Taylor as well. But if I were only doing one draft, I think I am getting to the
You're
point
on the clock
where I would just say it's Christian McCaffrey. Now I'm hearing yours say you're on the clock.
Did you mute it?
Yeah, I muted the site, but I'm like, it's not my turn, it's your turn, and I hear it.
Interesting. I'm muted, so I don't know why you're hearing it. Well, let me pick.
No, I was trying to distract you from your pick. That's really all I was doing. Let me give him a technical problem.
Yeah. Let's see here. Which way I want to go? Last time I started, I think I'm going to do. Let me see here. I think I'm going to do the same thing, actually.
So the thing I immediately notice over here, and I've drafted over here in the past as well, and what I love about, this is the contest. You have to start 3 wide receivers, but you also get 2 flex. So that's and it's PPR. So that's kind of the interesting angle over here. And it does push the receivers up, in a lot of drafts, because you could start up to 5, but you have to start 3. And so we've had quite a few receivers go, and then like you just turned 2 more with Lamb and Evans. Are you? I'll be honest with you. I'm not as high on Evans as I was, just because now we know Godwin's ahead of schedule. Probably not as much as people think, but he's definitely like ahead of where we thought he might not be ready until like November. And then now Julio's not great, but we have seen elite wide receivers like have a big season at 34 or 35. The true elites, like going back a long way. Yep. And I'm not saying it's going to happen. I put Julio as a wide receiver 5. But then when you think about Russell Gage too, it's almost like, we like Mike Evans, but we pushed him up because we're like, man, with no Godwin, with none of these other things, like he's going to have to be like he was at the end of last year, like just 20 points a game, like into the NFL playoffs. Like if you go look at those games, like, he was scoring 20 to 25 points. My concern is now we're really back to, it's a great offense. It's Tom Brady, but it's much more spread out. I haven't been taking him in the second round anymore. I've kind of slowed down on Evans.
Yeah, I'm still high on Evans. I mean, he was my wide receiver 6 prior to all the news. I haven't gone through and adjusted him yet. It's definitely going to come down, but I still think we're still going to see the every year 1,000 yards, probably realistically 11 to 1,200 this year, probably double-digit touchdowns again. That's going to put him in that wide receiver 10 to 14 range on a probably fantasy points per game aspect, in my opinion. We have to think too, Julio is at the age where his body's been falling apart. We've seen it kind of taper off in the last 2 years as well. His yards per reception are still probably going to be in that, high 14, low 15 range. I have him projected right now for about 55 catches. Which
where do you have Evans in your ranks?
Evans, I need to adjust him still. Like I said, I haven't finalized since the news.
Yeah, I moved him down. I had him at 8, or I had him at 7, and I've moved him down to 11.
Okay. Yeah, he'll probably settle for me in that 8 to 10 range. Is probably about right. So I think 11.
But I have him graded as a wide receiver 2. I only have 7 receivers graded this year as what I consider wide receiver 1s. I think then you're immediately in the what traditionally, and this is looking historically at fantasy points and points per game since 2010. Like, what are the thresholds you need to cross for me to really think you're going to be, a wide receiver 1? Not just will they be a wide receiver 1 this year? More, would they have been a wide receiver 1 over the last 10 years? Is the way I look at it.
So do you have Lamb as a wide receiver 1 this year with the expected increased opportunity?
I have Lamb as my number 5.
Great. Yeah, I think that I had him at 5. We moved Diggs just ahead of him. Let me pull up my rankings, double check here. I might as well have him pulled up as I'm talking about him, right? Mike Evans actually was at 5. He's going to be moved down probably to that 8 to 9 range, but we still have Lamb is going to be moved. He was at 6, so he'll go up to 5. Devontae Adams will go to 6. So
is it on me? Crap.
Yes, it is on you because you muted it.
Yeah.
So you
I told her to shut up. I told her to shut up, and she said, "Fine." She says, "Now you're not gonna. Yeah, now you get nothing. No soup for you."
Yeah. The other thing I'm going to go back to Mike Evans in this offense is we expect Julio not to play an entire season at this age, and if he does, he's dust in my opinion, and in a shell of himself. I do not expect Russell Gage. I know I'm not buying the he's going to be possibly ready by week 1. It's just physically impossible. You look at timelines for ACL injuries, and there was a study that I had read between I think it was the years of 2017 to 2013 to 2017. I'm assuming it's another 5-year study there that's going to come out here shortly. But that being said, the average recovery time was anywhere from 9 to 12 months. And so I don't expect it to be that 12-month cycle. Would put him in December, right? He had surgery in January. I think that if he is on the earlier side of that timetable, let's just call it 9 months. We're still looking at end of October. You look at their schedule, and they got two games between that and their bye. If he is back earlier, he's not going to be playing at 100%. You look at like the year that Gronkowski came back early. I think, don't quote me, I think it was 7 or 8 months, and he ran limited snaps for weeks. So even if Godwin is on the field early, it's a big if. I do not expect him to be running more than probably 40 or 50% snaps, quite frankly, just because there's no reason to risk injury for, we keep saying Brady's last year for the last decade, for Brady's potential last year, right? And you have to think they want to save him to get into playoffs and use him down the stretch. Why risk the possibility of re-injury on him being rushed back? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So even if he is on the field, it's a reduced in a reduced role. Gage is there, but that's not going to affect Evans as much, and I think the Julio signing affects Evans more, but I still think Evans is still good for double-digit touchdowns and over 1,000 yards. And as much as Tom Brady passed last year, there's just no signs of slowing down in the passing volume and the attempts, and quite frankly, his statistical output of fantasy points. I really like Evans again this year. He does take a slight hit, but he's one of the most consistent players in fantasy. Maybe he lost more of that ceiling, in my opinion, but he's still going to have that pretty safe floor.
The challenge for him is like when he's had the other weapons around, like his profile's been on a decline for 3 years. Yards per route run down every year. Targets per route run down every single year. Like touchdowns have kept him in play, and the fact that the Bucs pass so much and you have Tom Brady. So I think those things are all good. My concern with Evans is when you need him the most at the end of the year, there's a really good chance that this team is in a super groove and they're just throwing it to all the weapons. And in those scenarios over the last few years, that's just made Evans. It still makes him a wide receiver, a high-end wide receiver too. Yep. It's just right now, I think we're drafting Mike Evans at his ceiling right now. And I'm not saying it won't come through, but there's just enough concerns there, for me to.
So can you list me your wide receivers that you moved ahead of him with the news? I'm assuming, is that someone like Tyreek Hill, Debo?
Yeah, Debo, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, T. Higgins are all ahead of him. Okay. Technically, you could talk me into Michael Pittman just because Pittman's more of an ascending talent. He's on the way up. Mike Evans is starting to come down. But again, we've seen receivers still have these huge seasons even whenever they're older. So I try to be careful with getting too concerned about that at the position. Like even Julio's underlying data points, like, yeah, he's been hurt. But when he's been on the field, like he's still basically putting up wide receiver 2 underlying or metrics that would indicate he's still a wide receiver 2. So I worry about Evans more later in the season. Maybe he still has the same hot start. Regardless, I definitely think Godwin's coming back sooner than what I originally thought. I thought it would probably be early November before we saw him. Now I think there's a chance we're seeing him by early October. And so it just moves the timeline up for everything. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it just shrinks Evans' window down. So I still like him. And over in this format, where you got to start 3 wide receivers, obviously supply and demand, is everything. So
I always like to ask this question with people, especially when we have, a little bit of difference in beliefs. If the season ended today, would it surprise you if Mike Evans was the wide receiver 1 for the fantasy season?
Yeah, it would. It would. It would surprise me. I think he's in his range of outcomes, but I don't consider him, to be. I think he's I think we should be drafting him as a high-end wide receiver 2, just based on every metric that I look at. Right, starts with talent, then it starts with the opportunity. The quality of the opportunity, the quarterback, then it moves over to what's the target competition. So he checks all those boxes. I just expect the target competition to be much greater as the season goes on, and that's gonna cap the upside. Now he definitely has outs. If for some reason Godwin does take too long, Godwin gets re-injured, we're all of a sudden back in a scenario where we think it's pretty much going to be him and Russell Gage for most of the year. Then obviously like that would open up that avenue. But I'm just reading the latest signals we have, right? And trying to adapt, but not over adapt. Like when I first started the season, like I think I had Mike Evans at like 15. So I've still got him above that. I've kind of got him between where I started and between where I moved him up to, so I kind of got him right in the middle of that.
So Tampa Bay has 186 vacated targets, 26% of their target share available this year. 111 alone at the tight end position. I couldn't help but notice how much Julio now looks like a tight end to me. It'd be very interesting to see if they actually started running him in some maybe tight end capacity. Maybe not necessarily as a blocker, of course, but more of that, X type tight end, kind of like a Kyle Pitts per se role, right? It'd be interesting to see how he's utilized in that fashion, if at all, because you look at once we do have a healthy Godwin on the field, where's this pie going to be split? You're on deck. Right? And I agree with you on everything you've said so far with Evans. Evans, of course, is the one for me. I still think Gage is probably going to be the second most targeted individual on the team. I'm on the clock. 1 second.
Yeah, Team 10, I actually like their start. DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones, Travis Etienne, and a full PPR. This is a rare year where you can line up the explosive pass receiving prototype, the archetypes. Mm-hmm. Normally, you're lucky to get 2 of these. in a draft. Now you might get one later that you hit on, but talking ones where we pretty much know what their role is going to be right now. And I mean, ETN's the key part of it. Also, Alvin Kamara has been a part of it because right now, you can get him in round 3. Fournette also an every down back. And so I mean, there's a plethora of every down backs right now available in the late second to third round, which is just typically not there. And again, not just any. A lot of these are on really good offenses, or they've got really elite upside in the receiving game in a full PPR. And I know people tend to be like, oh no, this doesn't work anymore. Like every year is absolutely different in the way the value falls and the way that drafts are going to work. And you have to assess that first. Now, that doesn't mean zero can't work. That doesn't mean, robust RB can't work. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means understanding where the value falls in your draft. I think that's one of the biggest things I see people when they get so hung up on a strategy nowadays. Number one, often they don't know how to interpret the strategy that someone has laid out. That's really more of a structure. It's guidelines, not necessarily very rigid. But at the same time, like the other part I see people a lot, they don't do is like, I always like to go work my draft backwards. Like, where do I think the biggest pockets of value are? What positions are they at? Do I think there's 8 running backs I love between round 7 and 11? Well, that means I can likely get 1 to 2 if I wait. So maybe I'm okay going hero RB, this year. Where are the pockets of receiver value? People hear me a lot of times talk about, quarterback. When do you pivot to the quarterback? And I think there's a lot of ambiguity whenever you get in the middle rounds at receivers, and there's a lot of intrigue with just saying, well, I could get a dual threat badass quarterback. Like, let's just do it. So every year is a little different based on the strength of your tiers and all those different things. And so I think this year you can pull off the RB. You don't just jam any 3. You don't jam just any 3. That's key. I have to tell people, because then people will send me their lineup in a DM, and I'm like, no, not those 3.
You forced it.
They're like, what do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah. So being a volume drafter, you have the ability to, get creative in builds, and maybe some are unhinged and some are going to actually have a chance, right? But we did a draft earlier today with Dave Hubbard, my draft partner, and we started 4 running backs. It was a best ball build, and it actually worked out pretty nicely. We just, didn't need to take another running back, but you can get as creative as you want, as long as you understand the concept and basics of roster construction. And you can look at your roster and say, I don't need another running back. Or you look at it and say, I need to address this position. If you're starting with 4 running backs, again, not recommended for everybody, but if you are, you need to hit the wide receiver position heavy. You're going to have to push a position, if not 2, in order to make up at that ground. So at another position like wide receiver. So you're going to, for us, like we pushed quarterback and tight end, which is I'm comfortable doing in any room altogether anyways. And so curious your thoughts on your normal draft strategy. If you were only doing 1 draft, are you a anchor running back or hero running back guy? Are you
if I'm only doing 1 draft, I'm reading the room, and I'm letting, honestly, the same way I build when I make 100 rosters. I let the first 3 picks basically determine like the way that value falls. It kind of basically settles me into a path, and then that path I'm still willing to veer from when really good value drops to me. It also depends on what position I'm picking from. If I'm in the middle position, I'm much more likely to be super value oriented, and much more willing to push things and try to make like, huge things happen. For example, if I see, I could take a tight end, but I could pass the tight end because I think there's 2 left that I really love, and I know that it's going to be back to me in 12 picks and not 24 picks. I'm going to do it. If I'm sitting there looking at Waller and Kittle, I'm going to try to let Kittle fall back. But if I'm drafting from the turns, that does change things a little bit. So I still let the early rounds and the way the value is falling, dictate what I ultimately want to do. But it's also, I already know like where the pockets of value are. So whatever happens early on, like my mind's already thinking, okay, you need to be thinking about this in this round. You need to be thinking about this in this round. You need to be thinking about this. And then I'm adapting that like as the draft happens, because sometimes people reach for stuff and things just get snapped off on you. I mean, so there's all sorts of ways for your draft strategy, even if you're being, adaptive, to still, get blown apart. So you just got to be nimble, man.
So you talk about draft pockets, and I love that you brought this up because it's very true. And I call it, I think you even mentioned earlier, you said almost, maybe correct me if I misquoted you, but it's like reverse drafting, right? Where you look at things.
Reverse engineer it is what we say. Yeah.
And so I love it because draft board review, and the process of draft board review is probably one of the most underrated processes in drafting and becoming a better fantasy player. Like, I will sit there, and after the draft, I review it, of course, that night. I then review it the next morning to make sure that my thought process, I can reflect on it and say, what was I doing? Did I miss anything? What was I thinking last night? Has anything, did I maybe miss a pick somewhere, right? And then I come back to it a week later and look at the draft board and see what happened in, news and what happened throughout, the rest of the week, or maybe does my process change? Did anything else happen? I look at it again in another week. So when I'm literally looking at a board 4, 5, 6, 7 times before the season starts from one draft, and multiple reasons, not just for the process of making sure I made the right decision, but like you said, did I make the right selection of that player? What would have happened if I in this draft, if I would have said, you know what, I'm not going to take Connor. I'm going to take a Marcus Brown, or I'm going to take a Metcalf here. What does my team look like later? What does that look like with 3 wide receivers and 1 running back? Do I like my running backs later? Do I like my wide receivers earlier? And you kind of, like you said, reverse engineer it, but also just make sure you do the swap in your head. How does my team look like with X player versus X player, and how does that affect the board later? Had I not taken, DK Metcalf versus Connor, or if I did, what does that look like in pick 10? What does that look like in pick 11? Where would I have addressed that position now, and how does that change my draft? And I think that is a very valuable process for folks to see, not only one, the flow of the draft board and to become familiar with the flow of a draft room, but also just to evaluate your own thought process for the draft that you just recently completed.
I'm with you. I love looking at other people's boards. I will lay in bed and people are posting boards. I'm like a freaking bug to a lightning, to a bug lamp. I can't, I go there and I start looking at it, and I start thinking, what was this player thinking? Am I missing something? I don't like their build. Am I wrong? Let me backtrack this. Like, how did they get to this spot? It's like poker, right? You're just constantly, there's all these levels to the game. The easiest part is just knowing your cue and who you want to draft. But then the next part is, how do you think multiple steps ahead? What is your opponent thinking? What does your opponent think you're thinking? All those sort of things kind of start to play out by being able to look at a draft board. Essentially, you can simulate the draft, right there. And it's way better than like a mock draft or something like that, to me, because I'm looking at people that have got, $300 on a draft. Like, I'm assuming they care and they're halfway prepared. I mean, they're drafting in August, so it's like, I love it. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm with you. I think it's one of the best activities you can do. Another thing that I will do at this time of year is I try to, utilize news cycles. So if there's a news cycle around a player that you're just like looking at it and you're like, what? This is going to go away. Like, this is just, the player just got a bump they probably shouldn't have got, right? And so you avoid it. But then there's players, when that happens, there's the ebb and flow, and all of a sudden another player gets pushed down because of that, right? And people will stop. You know how it happens. All of a sudden
I feel like you are directly relating to Russell Gage right now.
Well, yeah, that's part of it too. But it's weird. You'll have like these, just like a brief moment, like 3 days,
Yep.
where a certain player will be depressed by like a round, and then it's gone. Yep. And so it's like trying to figure out like what those things are.
Good example right now is Michael Thomas, right? He wasn't at training camp at the beginning. He dropped a couple of rounds. He went in like round 9. All of a sudden, he's back to round 7. He's probably going to start teetering in around 5 shortly.
If he keeps practicing, he's going to go higher, just because we know that he's been an elite player and we know it's in the range of his outcomes. He could still be really good. He's 29. He's not 50. So.
For those who are either new to the FFWC or haven't been on in a while, we just implemented a bunch of premium tools. They can be found in your league page as well as the dashboard. There's an ADP board, there's the ADP list. There's also the new feature on the ADP board. So it's ADP broken down into a draft board view, just like we're seeing right now. And I'll load it up here in a second after I pick. And you can click the button in the top right-hand corner, and it'll gray out every pick that has already happened. So it's linked to your draft room. And so you can get a live visual representation of ADP versus the draft room that you're in. It's a pretty powerful tool, especially for those,
really cool.
Especially for those who like to value draft. It's if you just hop into a room and you hadn't done much research or you haven't had a chance to really check ADP, it's right there for you, live and visual. So I'm going to pull that up here after I pick, because I have to share that screen, and then we'll be able to show you that tool. All right, let's catch up for the audio listeners for afterwards. So we're going to run through some of the picks. So round one, JT, Cooper Kupp, McCaffrey, Jefferson, Chase, Eckler, Diggs, Adams, Cook, Swift, Harris. I took Lamb and Evans. Henry falls the 2-2. We'll talk about that shortly. Aaron Jones, Tyreek Hill, Barkley, Jameson, or Javonte Williams goes to, I said Jameson, that was funny. Javonte Williams goes to 2-6, Mixon to the 2-7, Kelsey, Debo Samuel, Dwayne takes Higgins at 2-10. We got A.J. Brown, 2-11, Pittman at the 2-12. We got my boy Mike Williams at the 3-1. Alvin Kamara, his descent has finally kind of slowed down. Fournette goes to 3-3. Allen to the 3-4.
You're on the clock.
DJ Moore to 3-5. Sutton, Waddle, McLaurin, Etienne, Chubb, Connor. I'm on the clock. I'll let you. What's the most surprising pick outside Evans for me in the first 3 rounds?
Yeah, and I wasn't, busting your chops. I wanted to get your read on the situation. But I mean, Henry sliding to the second round, I think, is a surprise. I don't see anything that just makes me think like there was a really huge reach. I mean, Barkley and Williams were definitely targets for me. Leonard Fournette fell to me, but because of the format we're in, I at least wanted one of my tier 1 wide receivers, and T. Higgins is my last guy in that tier. And I kind of figured I was still going to have a shot at Kamara or Fournette. So I was basically playing the odds that I get one of those two to come back to me, and I was going to feel fine with it. And if I didn't, my backup plan was to go with Travis Etienne. So I was just really reading the board there and wanting to make sure I got one of those receivers that I really wanted. So, yeah, I think Derrick Henry falling into the second round. But it also doesn't surprise me because of the format of the league. You got the 3 wide receivers. You got 2 flex spots. I think, when you're in drafts like this, people just tend to gravitate, towards drafting the wide receivers. It's almost more like an underdog type atmosphere.
Yeah, it definitely pushes I'm going to load that up for people here in a second. Share screen. Let's just do the entire screen so people can see. Where's that ADP board? Let me go to the league. It definitely, the wide receiver start 3, because technically you're starting up to 5 wide receivers on a week-to-week basis. And when that happens, that's why we see the value of the tight end fall. We see quarterback fall here at the FFWC. We see the running back position fall because people are pushed wide receiver so far up the board. Here's that tool I was talking to you about. So when you load in, it automatically defaults to grade. You can turn it off and on up here. But this is the average draft position for the FFWC, and then you click that button there at the top, and it will show you exactly who's on the clock or who's on board still. That's going to be unhighlighted, so their actual color and their average draft position. So when you're looking at the board, let's use Antonio Gibson for example. Antonio Gibson here at the top here. It's kind of hard probably to see with you guys on the stream, but it gives you their pick number 60, the round they're selected on average 512. Running back 23 in their bye week as well. So very powerful tool, a lot of information right there for you to review, and you can just bounce back and forth between your draft and see what's happening. So top 3 rounds, Henry continues to fall, and not even just in FFWC. I mean, we've seen other sites as well where he has started kind of leaning towards the back end of the 1-2 turn. I've been in high stakes draft before where I've seen him fall to 2-7 as well. That was kind of the furthest I'd ever seen him fall. I'm not a big Derrick Henry fan this year. I mean, the big dog has 1,400 touches in his career. We saw 5.
He's still a player that you could look up at week 4 and be like, well, shit.
Yeah, I fucked up.
So he has the ceiling still. Honestly, I'm much more scared of passing him than I am Najee, just because I know the ceiling for Henry. Like Najee, I think is a great median outcome, right? But when I look at Henry and I know how dominant he can be and how committed they are to the run, like he could still have one last big hoorah, and he's always got that upside to score 15, 20 touchdowns. Like he's just a beast, man. And so I tell you, like he's one that I do feel like I still want to make sure I get a little bit of exposure on, just because the upside's so high. But to your point, like there's a bigger floor, than ever with him. And I mostly faded him last year. And honestly, like the injury bailed me out because he was destroying the league.
Yeah. I have somebody asking me to defend the Zeke pick.
I wasn't going to make you do that, but yeah.
I will. I'm going to pull up our tweets from the other night even. I'm going to see if I can find it. So it was, you know what? I'll just pull up my
I can give you mine in a nutshell for Zeke. Like I'm fine. I like Zeke, but really looking at his profile over time, this isn't just about last year and the fact that he was hurt. It's been in decline like since year one, and we know that Pollard is there. I think Zeke's still going to have a bigger role than what people think. I have Pollard with less touches than last year. Last year, it was inflated for him, because of the injury to Zeke. So it's not even so much that Pollard is going to take more of the work. That's always in the range of outcomes, though. When you get a guy that's aging like Zeke and maybe the coaches get pressed into making a decision, there are definitely outs for that to happen for Pollard. It's really just more that with Zeke, he's always going to be capped by Pollard. There's no way that he can have the ceiling he needs with as poor as he is at running the ball these days to just hit big. Now, his out is definitely through touchdowns. So you're getting a back on a quality offense. And so historically, if you go back and look at these guys that have all of a sudden, started to drop off like a Zeke, you can still see them later in their career punch a ticket to a 12-14 rush touchdown, season if they're on a good offense. And he has that. He has that going for him. So that's the thing I like about Zeke. And the other thing I like about Zeke is it's pretty much all priced in. So I'm fine with where he's going with ADP. I was more just messing with you the other night saying you can't make me. I think his upside case doesn't make me worry about passing him. You know what I mean? But I acknowledge that he's probably going to score enough points to pay off his ADP. I just don't know that it's not going to win or lose your fantasy league is where my head is at on Zeke.
So I think it can win the league.
Oh, shit.
And I think
I'm on the damn clock again.
Oh, you have 5 seconds.
Yeah,
I think it can. So while you're picking in the brief few
no,
seconds.
I had one person I was waiting on, and I got him. So I was surprised that Hunter Renfrow made it back. So
you're good then. So Zeke Elliott, even though he was injured last year, and this is what I always like to say to people, had Zeke just sat those games and not played those games and came back when he was fully healthy. Think of like with Derrick Henry was a different situation because it was a much more extreme injury and he had to. But the same concept here. Henry is now going at the tail end of round 1 on average, into round 2 in some drafts. Had Zeke just sat out those games and didn't look washed, and comes back and still puts up, I think he was like running back 15 in fantasy points per game. He was running back, I think 6 on the year for weeks 1 through 17 in fantasy football. Had he just sat those weeks though and comes back in, I bet you he's going in round 2/3 turn because they don't have the impression that Zeke Elliott looked as washed as he did when he was playing through injury. Now, Zeke's strength has always been the fact that he can play and be on the field, and he's been durable. But there's a few other things that I think are worth noting, and I think the Pollard comment is definitely within reason, and I think that Pollard, it definitely caps Zeke's upside again. I don't think we're going to see the running back 1 output from Zeke Elliott, or even maybe top 3 running back output, but it's not within the realm or outside the realm of possibilities for him to finish as a RB1 or a top 12 running back still in the league, simply based upon this offense. Now, this offense is still a very electric offense. They also have the easiest strengths of schedule in the NFL. They also have one of the easiest shootout schedules in the fantasy world. And for those who don't know what I mean by shootout schedule, it's the final weeks in playoffs. So it's weeks 15, 16, 17, where you're playing for all the marbles. They play the Jags, the Eagles, the Titans. And I think that this is going to be very fantasy friendly for Zeke. I think that we're also going to see a good pace of play. They ran, 27.6 rushing attempts per game, or team run plays per game, I should say, in 2021. He still saw the 7 most carries in the league with 237. He still saw the 7th most targets at 65. He was the 5th most in red zone touches. Then you bake into his contract. He's a $30 million cap hit this year in 2022. They're committed to him, whether fantasy players like it or don't like it. He's here to stay. And as much as we all like Tony Pollard, because I love Tony Pollard as well, I've always been a Tony Pollard fan, I think we're going to see more of Tony Pollard in the passing game. And what does that mean for Zeke? I think they can coexist. People forget that Amari Cooper's no longer in this offense. Gallup is still recovering from injury. Tolbert's a rookie. James Washington really hasn't been what we expected him to be coming out of college and hasn't quite hit like we thought he was going to. Now he's on a new team, learning a new system, and getting that rapport with the new players. So where I'm going at with this in a long-winded answer is that Tony Pollard, I think they figured out how to finally use him. They're going to work him in line, get him in the slot a little bit, use him more in the passing game, and we're still going to see Zeke Elliott a lot on 1 and 2, also involved in the passing game. So I would not be surprised to see both these backs outperform their average draft position, because as a drafter and a ranker, that's kind of what I look at. Can this person outperform where they're going in drafts? I think the answer is yes for both of those guys.
Yeah, I don't buy the Pollard and the slot stuff. We just hear it every year. Oh, Kareem Hunt's going to play the slot. Pollard's going to play the slot. Like it just never comes to fruition. I agree they figured out a little bit more about how to use Pollard. I also agree they can coexist. So ultimately, we're still on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like I said earlier. In a nutshell, he's still on a good offense. I really believe the way he pays off is through touchdowns, though. If you go look historically at these guys like Zeke that are hitting the spot, in their career, every once in a while you get a Curtis Martin, right? That'll just pop off for like 1,500 yards, 16 touchdowns. But that's on like 375 touches. Zeke's probably not going to get that. But where he could come through, he could give you 1,000 yards rushing and score 12 to 14 touchdowns. And to your point, he's gonna pay off his ADP. I think that's the main takeaway for me with Zeke. Again, I just don't believe he's someone that I think yes, he could hit his ADP. But I'm just not. I want more upside, to be honest. I honestly would rather have Breece Hall. I would rather have a player that I know he's got elite receiving chops. I know he's got the explosive playmaking ability. Am I taking a similar risk? And do I give him a lower floor than Zeke? Yes, I do. But he's the archetype I want, because when I hit, I can kick everybody's ass. Like when Zeke hits, it's just not going to move that much unless Tony Pollard gets hurt. He has an out for sure because he's in a good offense. But Breece Hall, like when we go back and we look at those archetypes, even in their rookie seasons, and yeah, there's Michael Carter, there's all sorts of things. You're buying into uncertainty, but I want the upside. I want the upside of that type of archetype. And Breece Hall's pretty similar to Travis Etienne, and you're getting him after, Travis Etienne goes and drafts. And I like Michael Carter, but Michael Carter was also a 4th-round pick, and Breece Hall was also really good in the receiving game, in college. So we could very easily see Breece Hall be a 65% back, plays on every single down, does everything. And then Michael Carter just spells him, every 4th series, every 3rd series. People immediately think, oh, Michael Carter's going to get the passing down work. I like Michael Carter. I was one of the first people to come out and be like, Michael Carter is borderline elite in the passing game. But so is Breece Hall. And so 2 really good backs. I think what you end up seeing is, really probably more of a split where they're both getting, they can both play every down, but it could still be like a 3-to-1 thing for Hall. So I just like the upside more of the young explosive player. And also a lot of times when Zeke goes, I'm usually taking a receiver to be completely honest. So just the way drafts fall this year.
I'm on the clock. Let me pick. There's one. Sorry, I'm in the zone right now. In the zone. Think I'm gonna go this route. Okay. Wanted to make sure I got another receiver there. I almost thought that. So back to Breece Hall. I actually almost took Elliott and Breece Hall in the turn. I decided essentially to go with Connor. I also really like Breece Hall. When I did,
I prefer Connor Hall to Elliott.
Interesting.
I like those two, but they're all really close, to be honest, in my ranks. Sometimes we get into these things where we're talking and people hear us like, oh well, he hates Ezekiel Elliott, he hates Tony Pollard, and then you look at both of our ranks and they're like all like 2 spots apart.
Well, and then so I talked about this last night on the podcast with Jody. Like we went through and we're talking about Leonard Fournette and
I love the Chase Edmonds picks. The Chase Edmonds pick you just made.
I love Chase Edmonds.
I do love it.
So we were talking about, running back 10 through like 18, and it's like separated by like 19 fantasy points, right? And in the giant scheme of thing, it's nothing. Right? You look at that and say, realistically, any of these guys could surpass each other because the points are so similar or so that close together. That's one missed game for a player, and he drops from like running back 10 to running back 19. And we did the same thing I did earlier with you. Would you be surprised? And we did the thing with Fournette, and we listed running back 11 through 18, and it was all of them. We got to the point to where we started getting around Breece Hall and started getting around, Montgomery. Would you be surprised if they finished ahead of Fournette? And that's where we start saying, yes, I'd be a little surprised, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities.
Right.
And so, Fournette with me, just to kind of touch base on that, and the reason why we use him as an example was, of course, the news this week of Jensen and the interior offensive line just kind of in shambles this year for the Bucs, and how much is it going to affect the rushing game and Fournette. And I'm not, the whole weight thing is just kind of more of a joke for me than anything. I mean, we know he's going to get in shape and have the opportunity in this offense with a Tom Brady led offense and the red zone touch he's going to get, also in the involvement in the passing game. Love Fournette and the value he was at this year, especially at 3-3. We're seeing that ebb and flow, like the news you talked about, right? The getting that maybe that week or the couple days of that value in the player. Because if you drafted this time last week, he was 265 pounds, and I joked around and called him Lasagna Lenny. This week, now all of a sudden, he's in shape, right? And he seems to be
you're
okay.
still getting the depressed potential, where he comes around the turn,
Yep.
in the third. Yeah.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of news this week affecting players. Let's continue on. So we talked about rounds 1 through 3. So I took Zeke at 4-1. St. Brown goes at 4-2. We have Marquise Brown at 4-3. Deontay Johnson at 4-4. Metcalf, Akers, Cooks, Hall, who we just talked about, Montgomery. You took Pitts at 4-10. We'll come back and talk about that in a second. Allen Robinson, Gabe Davis. Then in rounds 5, we get Bateman, Waller, Godwin, Elijah Moore, Jacobs, Mooney, who's my boy, Juju Smith-Schuster, Drake London, Michael Thomas climbing back up boards, Russell Gage, Judy, Amari Cooper. See, you took Pitts here at 4-10. Seeing that Kittle went at 6-11, knowing in hindsight, would you have changed that pick?
No, I'm still good because Pitts falls past where I want him, and when I get that with Pitts, I'm just clicking. If they move him inside and play him more like a tight end this year, or even in the slot, he'll be the tight end 1 overall. Like, that's really all that has to happen. You just got to stop putting him outside against, the freaking best cornerbacks.
He's
in the
not
league.
an X receiver.
Yeah, and it's fine. And what's amazing is he still busted through an 80 PFF receiving grade. So the pick I regret, and we haven't talked about it yet, but I took Lamar Jackson in pick with my last pick. And here we are with Kyler Murray all the way back down the board.
You're on the clock,
and
by the way.
Jalen
Just a
Hurts.
heads up.
Yeah, I actually turned her back on so I could hear. So yeah, I hear her. And
That's
this is a sharp draft room. Like, people they're not reaching.
So that voice, the you're on the clock voice, that's Liz Loza.
Yeah. So just the way this draft has gone. And this is what I'm talking about being flexible. Even though I'm in a league where you got to start 3 wide receivers, the way people have pounded receivers so much, like, it's just a pivot for me right now. Like, I'm not going to just reach on a receiver because I have to have one. I'm going to take what I think the value is. So here I go with Kareem Hunt. But my mistake was definitely Lamar Jackson. I thought maybe we'd get a quarterback run to go. Patrick Mahomes went in front of me. I go Lamar Jackson. Justin Herbert goes quickly after. But people held the line, and so sometimes, that happens. I've also not drafted over here yet, so I'm really used to the rooms that I'm used to, playing in. And so that's part of when you jump into a room like this, and you haven't been drafting in, this, like whatever it is, whether you're doing underdog or whether you're doing full-time, like if you haven't been drafting in those rooms, you don't necessarily know quite, like, you've got a way better feel for how these go than I do right now.
Slight advantage. Yeah. Like, for instance, I did one of these about 2 weeks ago. I've done several in between, but 2 weeks ago, I got Lamar Jackson at the 9-5. And we started to see quarterbacks kind of creep up another round earlier, but it's been pretty typical to see the Lamar Jackson, the Kyler Murray, the Joe Burrow, all that range kind of go at the 8-9 turn, and some maybe trickle into middle to round 9. This round they went a little earlier, but like if you look at Lamar Jackson's ADP on our ADP list here at the Full-Time Fantasy site with your subscription, his ADP has kind of been fluctuating in between like pick 84 all the way to pick 104 is the latest he has gone. So
that's quite a range.
Quite a range, and it depends upon the room because you get a bunch of sharp FFWC drafters.
So I took him in round 7, and I could have got Kyler Murray in round 8. Like, so I have Kyler Murray ranked ahead of Lamar Jackson, but I need some Lamar exposure at this point in my year because I've been getting so much Kyler, and Lamar usually goes before I'm ready, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna pull the trigger on Lamar. I also didn't already have like someone like Hollywood Brown or anything. And not that you have to stack in a format like this, but I still think it can be good, right? If you hit, you hit. When you hit, you want to hit big. But I'm basically going naked on this. Like, I'm not really worried about any sort of a stack with Lamar Jackson. And he's one of the quarterbacks that I think it's fine that even if for some reason neither one of his, and I think his receivers are fine, but if for some reason Mark Andrews doesn't have a huge season, Lamar Jackson still has a path, right, to absolutely crushing just with his legs. So I don't necessarily have to force, having, a receiver stacked with him here.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson had the best fantasy output from a quarterback of all time. And it's all within the realm of possibilities. And this team is going to run the ball especially with now, the running back situation with both of them coming off injury and going to week 1 with question marks. Let's continue down the board. So Lamar Jackson. So I think we stopped at the end of 5. So 6. I took Devonta Smith at 6'1". Tony goes at 6'2", who was somebody who I also thought about taking there. Adam Thielen at 6'3". Josh Allen, the first quarterback off the board, at the 6'4". Olave at 6'5". Mitchell at the 6'6". Hopkins at the 6'7". Gibson 6'8". Dobbins 6'9". Your boy, you got Renfro at 6'10". Kittle 6'11". Burks is starting to climb up boards again now that he's in camp at 6'12". Dillon 7'11". Mahomes and Jackson go back to back at 7'2" and 7'3". To Dwayne here. My boy Rashad Penny at 7'4". Miles Sanders 7'5". Herbert 7'6". Lazard 7'7". Tony Pollard 7'8". Christian Kirk's 7'9". Schultz, Lockett, and Ayuk to close out the round. I took Ayuk at the 7'12" and double tap, and then took Edmonds at the 8'1". So any other surprises in those rounds for you in the draft, or maybe picks that you like that you're seeing in difference in ADP between sites that you may be a bit surprised, or maybe you like the pick?
Not really any surprises. This is very much like an underdog draft. So I would say anybody coming to draft over here at full time, like even though that's best ball, like the way the receivers go, definitely be thinking underdog. And if you think underdog, you're going to be pretty ready. This last round, I'm surprised. Like Dak Prescott going ahead of Jalen Hurts, like that's insane to me. And that wasn't even to get a stack for any sort of. This person doesn't have CD Lamb, So I would definitely be taking the upside of Jalen Hurts over Dak Prescott. You have a quarterback that could run. Any quarterback that runs for 800 yards, it's almost impossible for him to not have a top 8 season. Like,
dude,
he's almost a lock for that.
You scared me because I was hoping to land a stack here, and you mentioned his name.
Oh, my bad. I thought you had already picked him. Okay, cool.
Oh, no. Yeah. Don't take him.
And you got
don't take him.
And that's the great. My bad. That's why.
No, you're good.
I forget live stream. Like Ian and I, honestly, we don't live stream these. When we do big drafts, we just record them so that we don't do what I just did to you, which is like tip someone, like make one be like, "Oh man, freaking Jalen Hurts still here." It's not like they don't know it's in the queue, but
Yeah, no, I know. But
it's like It's like when you're at the freaking craps table, and
yep.
People are just mysterious. Like, you can't say that. Don't say that.
Well, I was talking earlier because I'm normally one to push tight end and push quarterback, and I did a new segment this week called Meet the Players, where I'm doing it weekly now, where players the FFWC come on, and Snake, who's in this draft, and the One Hole came on, and he asked me about my philosophy of pushing quarterback and pushing tight end, and I said I love to do it, and I believe I can always find value at the position, but if value presents itself, like Jalen Hurts here at the 9-10 turn, I'm going to jump on it. Right. If I've tried a different build though, and I need to push the position, I'll continue to push it. I think it's important as a volume drafter that you mix up your exposures. You can't come into the drafts and say, every draft from this point on, I'm not going to draft a quarterback in the first 10, 12 rounds, or I'm not going to draft a tight end in the first 12 rounds. You can do that for a period of time, but you need to adjust now to make sure that you have a balanced portfolio and your rostership, ownership, whatever you want to call it, is balanced, and that you're not 25%, Jared Goff or Tannehill, or maybe, Justin Fields, or name any quarterback in that tier, right? You want to make sure that you're mixing in other tiers and quarterbacks to really balance your portfolio, because if an injury does hit, you don't want to be out 1/4 of your lineups or a third of your lineups. You want to be out more of that like 10 to 13% range, or maybe even that 9% range or lower if possible. Let's catch up on the comments. We have a ton of comments. I haven't been paying attention. Sorry, folks. This is an interesting one because I'm not big on Skyy Moore. Trevor says 9th round Skyy Moore is dead sexy. What is your opinion on Skyy Moore? Very curious. You drafted him, so you must like him. So walk me through. Sell me on Skyy Moore because I'm just not sold.
Yeah, I love him. I think he's the absolute best bet to make on the entire Chiefs offense. Probably the most NFL-ready wide receiver, despite coming from a small school. If you look at the routes that NFL teams run more than any, like, he dominated in college. He's the best wide receiver coming out of this class in yards per route run against all the things, and the staples actually of the Chiefs offense. Juju Smith-Schuster's profile has been in decline. Yes, we've seen him have a big season, so he could still do it, but he's really been in a 4-year decline. Marquise Valdes-Scantling sucks. He's never been able to do anything with Aaron Rodgers, and he's not just all of a sudden going to be able to do it because he's now with Patrick Mahomes. he could end up being an outlier. Alan Lazard is really the same way. Like these people are just, you're just projecting volume onto these people because you don't know what to do it in most cases. And I get it. I've been there. It's like, well, these damn targets got to go somewhere. But what you have to remember is they're not going to be 25, 30% target share guys. What's most likely going to happen in those offenses, they're going to spread those passes that are gone, right, from Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams around to everyone. But if there is a player that can smash, and it's also about the price, right? Love the ADP, or hate the ADP, not the player, as Ian Hardis likes to say. That's really where I'm at, with the other guys that are available. So I absolutely love Skyy Moore. You're getting access to the AFC, NFC West, which I want to be all over as much as I can. 56% of the games projected to go for 50 points or more this year are based on AFC and NFC West teams. That's probably unheard of. I don't know because I don't have data back to forever. But can you imagine over 50% of the games that look like they're going to score over 50 points right now are actually in just these two divisions, and they play each other. So that's part of it. So that's why when you look at my team, a lot of times you'll see a Hunter Renfrow plus a Skyy Moore plus, a Rondell Moore from the NFC West, who I just took now, with my last pick. So yeah, I absolutely love Skyy Moore. Also gets the second round draft capital. So it's just a situation where he's walking in. I think that the number 2 spot behind Travis Kelce is wide open. I think he's as good as a bet as anyone on the team to actually take it, and you get him later. And I think the unknown of him, we just know there's more upside. We know what MVS is. We just know, like, he could end up coming through in fantasy, but it would look like this: 800 yards and 8 touchdowns. That's how MVS comes through. Skyy Moore, and he's already turning heads in camp. I think he could still end up being, you could look up and be like, holy crap, who's this rookie receiver that just gave me 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns? Like, that's in his range.
So I want to be devil's advocate here, because I've been, like I said, I haven't been sold on Moore. I liked his tape, don't get me wrong, but I just pumped the brakes after they went out and got Juju. They had MVS. And I know, I agree with you. I've even said on podcasts multiple times that it's not like MVS just left, I don't know, Jared Goff or Jameis Winston or somebody, who's been fairly atrocious, to Patrick Mahomes. He just left the back-to-back MVP. And now he's in a pass-heavy offense. But, and this is a big but, I'm a believer in also following the money. I think they're going to give him every opportunity to be that guy.
See, that's where we're different. I don't believe in that. I've just not seen. It's a
$10 million per year contract.
But it doesn't come through. Like, it doesn't translate. If we historically look at these players that weren't good before they got money, they don't suddenly become good.
Oh, I agree with that.
So.
But don't you believe that they're going to give him the opportunity because they paid him $10 million? Maybe he does.
Yeah,
suck. I believe he sucks.
Yeah, they're going to put him out there, but he's not going to be good enough to earn targets. Like, that's just that's what's most likely going to happen, because he's not a good enough player.
It's still snap share now, so snap share is now eating into the opportunities for Moore.
Well, and no, they run 11 personnel as much as any team in the league, and they could still do that. That's very true. So and honestly, it can be a rotation where he's bumping, MVS off the field. I'm just a believer in, if you can get upside talent taken in, day 1, day 2, early day 2 of the NFL draft, and you get to pair them with a player like Mahomes, and they have the profile that I just talked about, like, which is historically good. I want to be all over Skyy Moore. I think he's the absolute bet to put in the Chiefs.
Is McCole Hardman dead to you?
Yes, he's dead to me. McCole Hardman sucks. He also does not hit. Look, I mean, I put out an article over on PFF, like, of how to find breakout wide receivers and what are the key things we're looking for. What does history say about it? McCole Hardman, not good. MVS, not good. Alan Lazard, not good. Historically, those players do not hit. Russell Gage got a big contract, and actually his underlying metrics said he should already be a wide receiver too, but he was kind of anchored in a crazy offense. Now he gets to play with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. So I like Russell Gage. I do not like MVS. And Juju, again, like Juju, I'm fine with where his ADP is at, and I've actually been taking some Juju just to get some exposure. Again, AFC, NFC West. But at the end of the day, yards per route run, targets per route run, PFF receiving grade, all the underlying metrics we like to try to look at to help tease out the talent level of the player in the equation have been on a decline since his breakout season. And basically, he's been at wide receiver 5 and wide receiver 6 levels in all of those sorts of marks. So it's a perfect storm, honestly. Like, Skyy Moore, I believe in the talent. I believe in the team. I believe in the quarterback. I don't believe in the other receivers that they added, and I don't think that they'll suddenly be good just because they added them. I think the Chiefs made a major misstep with MVS. But at the end of the day, it's a 1-year, $10 million prove-it deal. Like, that's really what it is. Juju's is really the same. It's just incentive-laden, right? He just doesn't – he has to actually earn it. So I think
it's Juju's. Like 50 catches, 55 catches, 60 catches, all tiered out in the millions.
Yeah, so
he's got everything to play for.
Yeah, and Juju, at least, I have to say, he's done it before. So maybe there's a chance he's just been hurt, right? He was also tethered to Ben Roethlisberger, but I can't completely buy into that either because Deontay Johnson didn't care that he was tethered to Ben Roethlisberger. Yep. Chase Claypool, it happened a little bit last year, but overall still was better, right, than Juju.
It's more about immaturity with Claypool, I think.
Yeah, but at the same time, like he didn't allow Ben to totally tank him, whereas Juju did. So I just think there's a lot of outs for Skyy Moore, and when you can get him this late, especially with the way in a draft like this where all the receivers go, and I started a team the way I did, where I got McCaffrey and Fournette, I locked down quarterback with Jackson, I locked down Kyle Pitts. That's the way I built my team. I built my team to say, I'm going to try to kick your ass at tight end, my running backs, and my quarterback. And then I'm going to try to be really good at receiver at the end of the year when Chris Godwin comes on, when Skyy Moore is fully hitting, his mode. Early in the season, I should get help from Rondell Moore. We'll see what happens with Jahan Dotson. But honestly, again, we talked about earlier, the way the draft goes determines kind of how you're going to think about building your team. And that's what's happened here with the way it went. I could have easily been a really wide receiver heavy team, but the way people went and the way the value felt, remember, there's always different ways. This year is a very, it's an interesting year because there's a huge wide flat tier of receivers in the middle that I think are all very similar. And there's a bunch of running backs I don't want, which makes me more willing than ever to take an elite tight end or to take an elite quarterback or take both. Even in a league like this where I've got to start 2 flex plus 3 wide receivers, I think there is a lot to be gained if you can get one of the top quarterbacks. When I say top, it has to be one of the dual threats. And you pulled it off. And if there's a tight end that I would take after the top 5 that I think has upside to be in the top 5, you also paired him with that tight end. So I love
I was going to ask you
Goddard pairing.
I was about to ask you, where does that tier in for you? So if looking at the board, throw out the last name in that elite tier for you at quarterback and then do the same at tight end, please.
It's at Trey Lance. So Trey Lance is the one that's falling, but still I'd rather have Hurts, right? We've seen it for sure. Yep. But with Trey Lance, he's probably going to rush for 1,000 yards. So
it's very possible.
It's going to be hard for him to fail. He could be a Lamar Jackson, but if you look at the absolute elites where we know it, I have Patrick Mahomes last. I've got Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert. Well, I've got Mahomes and I've got Jalen Hurts, but I never take Patrick Mahomes. He goes too soon. I don't, and you can get these other guys later. And I honestly think they have just as much, if not more upside, than Mahomes.
I was just going to say, so Jack Colston, who's in drafts daily over here, just said I broke his heart with the Wan'Dale pick. He thought he's going to get him back in the 12th. And it was payback for Nico because I had DJ Chark and Nico Collins queued up ahead of Davis Price and Wan'Dale Robinson, and because these guys know who I like so much, they took him, of course, before I came around the turn. But Wan'Dale Robinson has been receiving a bunch of camp buzz. We saw today, I think in camp, someone posted that he led the camp practice in targets. The offense has been more explosive, they have been saying, with Wan'Dale Robinson and Tony being targeted on the intermediate and short routes and letting them to get into space and utilizing their human joystick capacities to get down the field and become slippery and hard to tackle. What's your take on Wan'Dale Robinson? Maybe just let's talk about the offense in general. Do you expect more from the Giants this year with Dable and Daniel Jones in year 2, maybe with Golladay, Barkley back? What's your take on the Giants and how do you think this is going to work out?
I actually like Wan'Dale. He's somebody that I've honestly been pumping for 2 months, just alone on the fact that he went in the 2nd round. And you could get him at the last round of an underdog draft back in the day. Now he's round 16. He's going to keep moving up because of all this camp buzz. It's pretty much known now that he's a starter, right? And so, I really love Wan'Dale Robinson. I hate that he's moved up this far, but we're also in a draft yes, and it's been very receiver heavy. So that's going to push these guys up. But I get why someone would do it. Why you would take them, that early. So I like Wan'Dale. Still do. I've liked him since the beginning, and it's starting to tighten up though. And this is what happens, right? As the draft seasons go on, people, overall, people just get sharper, and these ADPs start to tighten and they get closer and closer, to what they should probably be. Now, I mean, there's always opportunity for things to end up mispriced, so.
Jack Colschling gets Russell Wilson at the 12-5. This is usually why I push the position so much over here at FFWC. I mean, I don't have Russell Wilson and Jalen Hurts separated by that much, and I actually have Wilson ahead of Hurts in my projections. I did it more for a stack here with Devonta Smith, Hurts, and then tying to Goddard. But again, another reason why I continued to push the position at FFWC. We're now seeing the likes of Wilson and Stafford go off the board in the 12th round. Same thing with tight end. I mean, Hawkinson went at the end of the 10th, Ertz in the 12th. Continue to see these positions just be pushed down the board because of the scarcity at the wide receiver position, with being pushed up the board with the 3 wide receiver start and the extra flex position. So
yeah, when you bring me back for the next one and I'm ready for this, Billy, look at me. I got to plant the seed now. No, but dude, I love getting to do these different kind of drafts. And yeah, like looking at it, like I still really like my team. Like though, I think I've been kind of fortunate the way some of it fell and what I still got to do. And I'm pretty used to working my tiers over. And I've been just clicking names off like as we're going, like, and I got my tiers up, but I'm really having to watch them. Like, you know, I can't be like on autopilot here because there's certain players that are just going higher over here, right, than what I'm used to. And there's certain guys falling down the board. And then I'm talking to you, trying to make sure I'm marking everybody off. That's also part of the equation here.
You're muting Liz Loza and then you're timing out almost.
Exactly. But yeah, I think, you know, it's something to really think about, you know, the format, right, that you're about to play in and how it's different than others. I know I mentioned that earlier. Oh man, there goes Pickens. That was actually going to be my pick, but it's okay. I'm going to take one of my absolute favorite late round sleepers at running back this year. And it's going to surprise people because it's not my normal archetype. It's kind of boring.
Please tell me it's Marlon Mack. Oh no.
It's Jamal Williams. And I'll give people just a couple things. Look, number one, I think the offense is ascending the Lions. Yeah, we have Jared Goff, but we've seen Jared Goff support good offenses in the past, right? When he had the weapons. Now that didn't make Jared Goff a great option. It makes him an okay option in best ball, but he can support and he can operate an offense, right? We've seen an offense with, you know, Todd Gurley, an offense with Cooper Kupp, with Robert Woods, with Brandon Cooks. Like we've seen him support multiple weapons, you know, in the past. So we know it's something that can be done. But the big thing with Jamal Williams is last year in the games where the Lions were not trailing by 4 in the plays where they were not trailing by 4 points or more, which was most of their plays, the splits were way closer between Jamal Williams and between DeAndre Swift. Like we're talking 55, 45, 60, 40, not 70, 30. The game scripts, and that's why we love pass receiving backs, because they can be insulated from bad game scripts. You know, when you're a guy like DeAndre Swift, you're going to get carries, and when the game goes haywire, you're just the dude on the field catching passes. But his PFF receiving grade, his PFF rushing grade are not in alignment with really where DeAndre Swift's finishes have been. And historically, like if you look back, like typically good players, and I know people may not agree with everything about PFF receiving grades. We don't have to go into that right now, but generally speaking, they're pretty good. And it is typically, you don't see a fantasy player continue to score really big points without ultimately also putting up, you know, a good, you know, PFF, you know, grade of some sort. Occasionally you will get outliers, and that can happen. It's still a volume game, all those sort of things. So, but at the end of the day, like, so there's just outs. We could get a Swift injury. We could get, you know, Swift
and it
potentially reduced.
We saw it last year.
And he could get reduced playing time because maybe those PFF receiving grades are the same thing that the coaches are seeing. They could just lead more. They're going to be a better team. And then all of a sudden, maybe these splits are closer. Now, this is not me telling you to not draft DeAndre Swift. You should. He is a profile. He is the archetype we want. And even if the beauty of him is, even if Jamal Williams is involved, like he can be a Kamara type player, right? He can still come through and give you a top 5 finish. You know, remember, Kamara as a rookie finished as the RB3, didn't even get to 30% of the Saints carries. So people got to remember that. Like that's also a James Cook thing. Remember that when you think about James Cook, who got taken in the round where I was going to take him. When I took Kareem Hunt, I was actually going James Cook, whatever round that was, round 8, I believe, when it was coming back to me. So hat tip to who was that took James Cook there? Colston. I'm probably saying that wrong.
Colston's a good drafter.
PPC. He is a good drafter. I like his draft. He also took Barkley, who I love. You know, if you guys follow me on Twitter, you know that Dwayne loves Barkley. So anyway, that's my Jamal Williams thing. And it's not, and look, you get him late, but remember that we're throwing at the end of these drafts. I know we're not at the end, but I like making sure I get some of the guys I really want at running back. Like we're looking for guys that if an injury happens, you know, or there's paths to getting in there come week, you know, 10 or whatever, like we saw with James Conner last year, That's what I call him. I think Jamal Williams is essentially one of your best chances at getting a James Conner late this year. Look, last year Chase Edmonds goes down. James Conner all of a sudden scoring touchdowns. No, by the way, PFF, we've got the Lions ranked as the number 2 offensive line. They spent a lot of draft capital.
Yeah, they were like 11th or 12th last year, and then get Ragnar back. Like, they're going to be sneaky good this year. People don't realize. Like, I actually threw $100 on them for them to win their division.
I love it. Love it. Love that.
I mean, they're biting kneecaps on the way up. Everyone's already hurting at the knees.
Yeah, I mean, how can we not like that?
But you look at this team and what they did down the stretch, and this team was playing with heart. Like, they were getting just destroyed all year, and it didn't matter. Like, when they finally were winning, like, you could tell it was like they would look like they were playing for a Super Bowl. Like, they were bought into the system. And anytime I can see that, like, that's the human element that I talk about all the time in the podcast. You can look at analytics, you can look at statistics, and all you want. How does the human element affect football? And that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's the buy-in to the system. It's the coach, the motivation. How are these players going to respond together as a team? Detroit is it this year. I'm telling people. You're going to surprise.
I'm with you. I really like it. I think it's a great call by you.
Defense is also going to be sneaky good this year as well. I am sold on the Lions. I was really sad to see DJ Chark, who I honestly should have just pushed up my rankings more. I'm not going to take him ahead of Goddard, of course, but you see he's climbing. He's starting to climb here, and I talked about this on the podcast the other day as well. I would not be surprised if at the end of the year I look up and DJ Chark is the wide receiver 1 on his team. Like, Amon-Ra St. Brown, it took the injury of Hawkinson, it took the injury of Swift and everybody else in this offense for him to really break out. They go out and sign DJ Chark, who has the size and the speed. Jameson Williams is still recovering from injury. DJ Chark has shown he's been, top, I think it was top 5 in air yards. That was his rookie year, the second year, I forget which year it was. And he's shown that the capacity to be able to perform in the NFL because of that size and speed that he has. Love how cheap they got him, what they were able to do by going out and get Jameson Williams, not have to rush him back because of Chark. And I think that everything coming together, man. And I think that the Lions this may be the year that they surprise people.
Yeah, I'm in on him. I'm not as much in on Chark. I'm in on him at cost, like where you get him. I'm an Amon-Ra St. Brown believer. I mean, rookie PFF receiving grade of 80 plus. It's just a freaking who's who list of badasses. Like, there's not a miss. And so Amon-Ra, yeah, there were injuries. Did that help him? Yeah. But guess what? If you're not good at football and the other team knows you're all that the team has, which was the case at the end of the year, you can't generate targets. Like, we've just seen it too many times. Like, Alan Lazard could never do it when Devontae Adams was out. You couldn't get him a 30% target share. Not good enough. Amon-Ra St. Brown is good enough. Absolute beast. They're talking about funneling the damn offense still through him. I think you're getting Amon-Ra St. Brown right now, honestly, at his floor. Now he went a little earlier in this draft, and I honestly, Amon-Ra St. Brown was like, I wanted Pitts or St. Brown coming back, or Breece Hall. Like, that's what I was really hoping. Those are my 3. That was my wish list. Coming back that I thought was reasonable, right? Obviously, there's other players that went in that round that I like, but I thought, looking at your ADP here on the site, like, I got a shot at these guys. But he got snapped off really quick by Frankie Fantas. So good pick by Frankie Fantas. I absolutely love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think you're getting him typically in drafts at a wide receiver, low end wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3 price. And he's easily going to give you wide receiver 2 upside. And I still think there's a sneaky case he ends up giving you wide receiver 1 upside when you just look at the list of players that graded out similarly to him as rookies.
So I know you haven't drafted over here in a little bit of time. How are you liking the updates? We've made a lot of changes, not only to
Oh man, I love them, man. Dude, awesome. You've done a great job. You've honestly, like, you've really done a great job. I liked it before, but like, it's a better experience, as far as just usability. And not trying to talk down to like what it was before, but it's been clear to me, like, that you've made it, a priority. To get this set up.
The UX was a priority. We wanted to make sure that, one, it was you're able to draft from your phone, right? That was a huge push this offseason.
That's huge.
2 was just the visual user experience as well, being able to just see things better, give the people the tools. Like, coming over here, it's funny how fast my role had kind of changed. I came over here as an analyst and to do rankings and write articles, and I think I've only written like 2 articles. and and I've been so hyper focused on the user experience and changing the board and creating tools, and I don't have access to anything. I'm just giving them feedback as a player, and hey, I think we should change this. Like the top of the board here, right? I don't have to count squares anymore. I was so tired of counting squares. I don't want to have to count how many
things, man.
I don't want to count how many green squares I have. I don't want to count my yellow squares. Like, I know it's more than 5, but I have to count it every time, right? And so I said, you know what? Top of the board, we just need the player's name. We need their construction. We don't need defenses on there. I don't care. We don't need kickers on there. I don't care. Just do quarterback, running back, wide
Ian
receiver,
Hardis
tight
would
end.
love you. Ian Hardis would love you right now. Like you're hitting on all the notes, all the sweet notes that Ian would want to hear.
And I was like, you know what? Worst case scenario, they can look.
You could get Ian on this podcast to do this with you, just based off of like if you just pitched him on what you just said to me.
Give the kickers and defense the boot.
Yeah. Oh, he would be in.
So it's nice because you're on the clock. You can look here and say, like, for instance, your build is 1-5-7-1. You see that both these guys to the left of you have 2 tight ends. Mm-hmm. You can push tight end now another round if you had the desire to go 2 tight ends, because they're probably less likely to take a second because of the 2 they have on the board. And rather than having to go through and count the colors, you can just look at the board.
Yeah, I love that too. Yeah, dude, and most places don't have that. Like that. That's a good one. And on the draft board like this,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
There's another thing you can click to where you see your, yeah.
And I don't switch to like the draft room. It's per se like I have multiple screens pulled up, but I don't switch to like where I actually click draft player until I'm actually like on the clock or counting down. Like I'm looking at the board, I'm looking at the flow of the room, I'm looking at the builds, and that's like how I draft. Like I just click over to make my selections. So, yeah, I love the changes we've made. I'm glad that you like the changes as well. A lot of tools, like I showed people earlier. This is the ADP tool, and you can see the ADP. You can also see the last 10 drafts they've gone in. So that's the numbers here to the right. So oldest is to the right, newest is to the left. It also gives you their high and low. So let's just pick a player. Let's pick Darnell Mooney. His low he's gone is 44. His high is 52, and you can see his average or his last 10 draft picks over there. So lots of cool tools. I'm going to keep stalling as you're picking.
Yeah, I was looking over stuff here.
And then I'm a big, like I said, board guy. So a lot of the changes have been on the board too, just a lot of different information on there. And it's great for podcasting, right? We can just look at the board and say, hey, you took Lamar Jackson at pick 75 at the 7-3. He went out QB3 off the board, right? It's just a lot of, I love the Will Fuller pick, you bastard. I was hoping he'd come back. That's the round 15 snipes.
I mean, the way I built now, I just have to stack the receivers. And it's harder to hit on these receivers late than it is the backs, because the backs, it's just volume. If an injury happens, boom, you're freaking in business. Now you got to have the right things hit. You know how it goes. Sometimes, man, you draft the sweetest freaking handcuff backs on the planet, and not a damn one hits all season. So I mean, it can go either way. But typically, I feel like I like maximizing my picks later with those, which is why I went ahead and took Henderson and Jamal Williams in the middle of all this. But honestly, all I do now, I'm just drafting players that I know have the talent traits I want. Curtis Samuel has flashed the ability to be a wide receiver 2 in this league. It might be a more crowded offense. Yep, I got to deal with Carson Wentz. Don't really know what the Commanders are going to do on offense, but I know Samuel's a guy that you can move all over the formation. He's explosive. He has big plays, and he's flashed in the past. Will Fuller, same thing. Just don't know where he signed, but we know that the player can be good, and he could easily, be a guy that doesn't have to come in and be the one on any team and can still deliver value, right, as a complementary piece in an offense, just because he can be the deep threat. So I like thinking, through the players like that. Once I get to this range, I'm honestly not trying to project
it's upside
starting roles, right, for certain guys. I also don't think, well, this guy might start the first 3 games of the season. I'm typically so I'm not on AJ Green, right? I'm just not. I want the upside of the talent this late in the draft.
So we have a question here. Question for Dwain. Back to the Zeke versus Pollard. PFF has Pollard as 90 grade for the run versus 76 for Zeke. How does that play a role for you in setting where they go?
Well, it's less against Zeke because we do, there are other factors, right, against, with the contract and everything. And the coaches don't always follow that, right? Just like I talked about earlier with, DeAndre Swift's got a similar challenge versus Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams actually graded out as the better player. But when I look at it, what it does for me is it makes me more willing to really forecast the upside for Pollard if you hit, right? Now, Pollard, here's the thing, folks. You need Zeke to go down for Pollard to hit, or the pick you're spending. But the question then becomes, okay, but if Zeke goes down, like, what am I talking here? Pollard over in best ball, I like a lot better, to be honest, because he could give you spike week value. Dude, I had Pollard on half my teams last year, and he played more than what he's going to play this year. And I will tell you, there was never a time I was comfortable putting him into my flex. When I loved him the most is when he was just my damn RB2 and I had nothing else. I'm like, just get in there, Pollard. Like, just let the rest of this team carry the weight. If you score a touchdown, I'm in good shape today. But I never wanted to flex him. I did not want to flex Tony Pollard. Like, I felt way better when I had receivers and things like that. And honestly, I think the same thing's going to play out this year. So I don't have a ton of exposure to Pollard, but I acknowledge that the upside is like just rocket fuel. Like, it's all there. And that PFF grade and things like that, it's talent. That is part of the equation, is talent. So for every player, I go through a process. Talent is number one. And the PFF grades are part of that. You hear me talk about yards per route run, targets per route run. Can a player demand targets? A player now gets a target. Can they actually do something with it afterwards, right? Because those are two tiers of players. There's certain players that can demand targets, they can work zone, and then they fall down. Then there's other players that can do that and also just explode for, an 80-yard touchdown from anywhere on the field. And so those are the layers of talent. Then I look at what's the situation, what's the quality of the offense they play in, how good is their quarterback, what's the ADP of that quarterback? Oh, everybody likes him as the fourth quarterback, and it's not a dual threat quarterback, right? So I'll use ADP, for that. I use the PFF quarterback grades. And then I look at what's the quality of the team. How many wins is this team projected for? Better teams score more touchdowns. Touchdowns win fantasy leagues, as much as we may call them variants. Touchdowns are where you can make up huge ground. And then the last thing, what's the construction of the offense? What do they want to do? And then what's the target competition? And then how does this player fit into that? And so you take all those things together, but talent is easily like is the heaviest weighted thing, right? And then each one of those things is worth maybe a little more or a little less, depending on the position that I'm looking at. And if folks want to see it, I put all of this into my tier articles for you. I give you all the data that I'm using to drive the tools that hit those boxes I just talked about. And that way, when you're looking at a tier, you'll see like it's a bunch of group players that are grouped together because they're all very similar. Hey, very high talent players got a question at quarterback. And that helps you find arbitrage plays in your draft. It helps you break down, the AD, because the ADP is important because you want to get value, but it can also break you down. It can make you just want to follow it, and you don't need to. We should be creating the ADP, and we do, based on like the data and the information. Now, then we want to turn around and use it because we want to get as many of these archetypes of players that we're looking for as we can based on the ADP. We don't want to constantly reach, in all these. Like if I can get Kyle Pitts in round 4, I don't want to take him at the beginning of round 3, even if I love him. Right. So that's where ADP still comes back into the mix. And I use it to also help make my tiers. So when I group players, I don't have people picking too high. But the point of where I was going, you can see everything behind my process. And plus, so if you care more about the situation maybe than I do, than the talent, then I'll have 2 tiers back to back. Because the next tier may be great offense, descending talents. But you may be like, you know what? I don't care about the descending talent. I want the dude that plays with Patrick Mahomes. I'm taking Juju Smith-Schuster over DK Metcalf, who Dwain has pushed down, that.
I think at times that we have done this, we have seen just it bite us in the ass, right? You look the most recent example of, ascending to the top, and it's Jonathan Taylor and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? And people push Clyde Edwards-Helaire up the board because of the landing spot when everybody knew Jonathan Taylor was a superior talent. Right, but they moved him down. But I want to pause that because I love this comment.
I can't even snake Kenyon Drake in this draft, you people.
I wish Dwain put some thought into his process, says Trevor here.
Yeah, I need to work harder at it for sure. Hey, man, it's a full-time job now. Like, I have no damn excuses. So, I got to freaking bring it, Well,
I love how you just the way you explain it. It's very elegant. You just have a way of describing it. So you're welcome. Visually, it people are able to visualize it and make sense for those who are not only just following us on the podcast on the video side, but also on the podcast on the audio side. So very well said on everything that you have talked about. I want to go back to
the other thing I want to recognize here is I love the tiers and I love using the data to push it because I don't like getting locked on player takes. I think it's a very dangerous thing to do.
It is.
And it's an easy way just to honestly toast your whole season. So I really want to think about things in terms of archetypes because guess what? Sometimes we will be right. Other times we're going to be wrong, but I want to make it more about the archetype and not just a player take, if that makes any sense. I'm going to make a controversial pick.
Yeah, make controversial pick, and then I'm going to ask you another question. It is a player take, but maybe we can talk about the offense.
Yeah, and I don't mean player takes are bad, because honestly, people still want to hear that. But I just try to always frame it. Here's the player take. Here are the other 4 players I think that are like them, based on the attributes that we just talked about, if that makes sense.
So we have a question here. They want to hear your thoughts on James Cook. So why don't we talk about not just James Cook, but also maybe this backfield and how you project this backfield to look come maybe week 1 and then into the season.
Yeah, so with James Cook, the big thing I hear on him is Josh Allen doesn't throw to running backs, right? And so I think sometimes we get super hung up on these micro type takes, and that's good data. That data is actually true. Typically, a running quarterback will not throw to a running back. But what you have to remember is there's different archetypes of running backs. James Cook is not a swing pass player. James Cook is built to work down the field. He's a plus ADOT running back. Billy, most running backs you look at their ADOT, it's like -1, -0.5. Why? They're the third, fourth read in a progression. It's a dump down out into the flat from a pocket passing quarterback. If I'm Josh Allen and I look in the flat and I see Zach Moss and I'm like, well, I could dump it to Zach Moss, or I could truck this linebacker and go for 40. Like, well, you're Josh Allen. You're just going to take off. You're better than Zach Moss, right? It's a decision for the team. What's best for the team, as long as you don't get hurt. Same thing with Lamar Jackson. You're not going to check it down. But remember, Cam Newton was a running quarterback and didn't throw to running backs. And then he got who? Christian McCaffrey, an exceptional downfield route runner. Alvin Kamara, exceptional downfield route runner. So typically these swing pass guys, once they're in an offense with a lot of other good options in the passing game, their target share becomes very fragile, because all of a sudden now the quarterback has 3 potential mismatches. One of them is going to win. Now there's no need to check down anymore. But when you're part of that progression because you work down the field, like James Cook, it's different. It changes the calculus of the way that a quarterback, we should think about it, a running quarterback and the receiving option that they have with them. And here's the other part. It's the Bills offense. It could be the most pass heavy offense in the league. It has one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So you're checking those boxes. And really behind Stephon Diggs, we have questions about everyone. We like making bets on the Bills offense, but we don't know for sure that Gabriel Davis is going to be good. Like, look, we like Gabe Davis, but look, there's a chance if you look at his comps that he busts completely, or he's a 15% target share guy and still does his job for the offense, scores some long touchdowns. That's in the range of outcomes. Same thing for Dawson Knox. He's not demanded a lot of targets. He's not a great yards per route run player. He's still young. He could take a step forward. But at the end of the day, we have questions like, really, how good is Dawson Knox? So you put those things together, and then kind of what you're talking about, the narrative of the team, and you start looking at the drumbeat. They went hard after Chase Edmonds right away. Then they get J.D. McKissick under contract. He reneges. He drops out, goes backwards, and goes back to Washington. Then they spend a second-round pick on James Cook. My thought starts going, okay, what if the Bills just want to absolutely push the boundaries of how often you just throw the ball in the NFL? And to do that, they want someone that could potentially be only a 30%. Maybe they only get 30% of their rushing plays, but more of an Alvin Kamara type player in the passing game. And I think that's the thing people forget. You can score a lot of points with only 30% of the rushing plays if you're in an offense like the Bills, and all of a sudden he could easily rack up 100 targets. Like, it would be really easy for James Cook. That's in his range of outcomes. And I think people are getting too hung up on this thing around quarterbacks not wanting to rushing quarterbacks not wanting to throw to running backs. So I absolutely love James Cook. And again, it's an archetype, folks. There's an archetype I'm targeting. Kareem Hunt, elite metrics, passing down back. Cordarrelle Patterson doesn't have quite the same upside to take over the whole backfield, but he has upside. Before he got hurt and got a high ankle sprain last year, guy was scoring 15, 16 points a game. Yep. You were very happy with Cordarrelle Patterson. But again, explosive playmaker, works in the passing game. Chase Edmonds, who you took, is in the same group for me. If you go look at my tiers, explosive passing back who works in the passing game, explosive back. No running back in the league hit 15 plus miles per hour more last year, nor according to Next Gen Stats. And Chase Edmonds, like, he's a great pick, and now he plays in a great offense. So I love the archetype of the back, especially if you go anchor RB and you wait, and you could really do it in this format. I think it could
can.
really work over here in this format. You wait, and then boom, you pull off one of those guys we just named as your RB2. And they're going to give you points no matter what because they're involved in the receiving game, and they have upside from there. And then you could turn back, get one more, but then you can come back behind that and you can hit all these upside guys. Like, you know, if you want Rashad Penny, if you're not Rashad Penny, if your guy's Rashad White, if your guy's Isaiah Spiller, if your guy, you know, Darrell Henderson should be in that group, Tyrion Davis-Price, you took one of them, you grab 2 or 3 of those as well. And I think it could work really good in this format. So I know that was a while. I wanted to let you get through your picks. So I saw it was back to you. I was like, oh, I'll keep going. Billy can have some peace and make his picks.
I appreciate it. We have a couple beats of pieces. I want to do some marketing here. We have 8 spots left in tonight's Player Profiler Championship Draft. It's going to be starting in about 30 minutes from now. If you are interested in drafting, head on over to the lobby. Go ahead and join that. If you use promo code Muzio, it's $100 off a 3-pack. Also, please note that you have all of the league winners inside the Player Profiler Championship this year are given a all-in pass to the Player Profiler website, courtesy of Matt Kelly and the Podfather and Player Profiler. So that just increased the total pool even more for this contest. It now takes the prizes up to $2,660 in league prizes, so $2,660 in league prizes, which is a pretty damn good ROI on your $349 if you're doing a single entry. So lots of goodies if you're joining the drafts, and 8 spots left in tonight's draft. That's going to kick off here in 30 minutes. It may be pushed back to midnight if we're not able to fill it in time, but there will be some progressive I should say, or it's not progressive. What's the word I'm looking for? You're the word master. What's the delays?
I'm working my damn queue right now. I'm not gonna lie. I was letting you promote, man. I was letting you promote. You caught me.
Yeah, I got called out for using the wrong word earlier. I'm in a tough crowd tonight. They're calling me out for using the wrong words on the stream. What do we have here? Muzio is infatuated with Damian. It's not so much Damian. It's just what this offense has. I mean, we saw Cordell.
Dude, I like the Damian Williams pick. I mean, I think he's older, but he checks the boxes I talked about earlier. The archetype. He has shown an ability to be an explosive playmaker and be very involved in the passing game. And those are things that you want with your late picks. You want guys with multiple avenues, especially if they play on a bad offense. Folks, you never want the early down back on a bad offense, because what do you need from an early down back? You need touchdowns. That's how you're going to win in fantasy. So never take early down backs from bad teams. I don't want Tyler Algier. I want Damian Williams, because if something happens with Cordarrelle Patterson, maybe they play him more at receiver because they need him to. And all of a sudden the backfield work opens up, and you got to remember, the NFL season is freaking chaos just from injuries alone, much less just changes coaches make in the year. And as much as we work on prognosticating and putting all this stuff together, you got to be open. And so you want to leave yourself open to players that have multiple paths to being on the field. And I think Damian Williams checks those boxes.
You look at what happened down the stretch too. Cordarrelle Patterson, like you said, the high ankle sprain, he kind of broke down, and his body's not going to be able to handle 200 plus carries in this offense. They went out and took Algier as well. And we know that, he's had some fumble concerns in college. And Damian Williams, in my opinion, they don't go out and make him unless they plan on utilizing him. I think we're going to see him more in the 1-2 downs. He also can be utilized in the passing game. Like you said, he hits a lot of the metrics in the boxes. I think that he has a real shot at potentially leading this backfield in carries, quite frankly. And it's not outside the realm of possibilities. And you get him for nothing.
That's you after 2 weeks of the season, he's not getting any snaps cut. You also get to know really quickly what's happening with the dude. And you got to make a cut early in the season. Like, I love that. And dude, now is the time to do this kind of stuff. Now's the time, because look at all the injuries that could happen in preseason alone. Tyler Algier goes down, like Damian Williams will then be a 13th, 14th round pick. It's just going to happen. But you're getting him right now. What round you get him? Like round 17, 16, whatever.
17, 12.
Yeah.
It's free.
It's free.
Right? There's literally no risk at that. If it doesn't pan out, great. I got to drop 2 players at the end anyways, so I'm going to have to pick up a defense and a kicker come week 1. So you don't have to, just in case, I don't know if you saw or not, you don't have to draft a defense. You don't have to draft a kicker. There's one waiver run prior to week 1. You can pick them up before the season starts.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, because I was reading the rules and I honestly looked for that, and I was trying to, but I was more concerned with getting my, making sure my tiers were all updated based on my latest ranking updates.
Yep, don't have to.
Yeah. Okay. I like.
Take your stabs.
I love this.
Yeah, right.
At this time of year, especially if you're drafting
exactly.
a day before the season starts,
then you draft your kicker and your defense.
Yeah.
So I get questioned all the time on this because I post the board.
That.
You're welcome. I probably just shot myself in the foot, but it's okay. You have it's good for radio. We have players all the time. I post boards and they're like, why wouldn't you draft a defense? Why wouldn't you draft a kicker? And it's like, because you don't have to. Why am I gonna? I mean, you're only starting 12 defenses on a week-to-week basis. I'll stream them. I don't care. I don't care if I have the number 3 kicker or the number 12 kicker. It doesn't matter to me, right? I'd rather
Especially
have
this time of year. There's so much opportunity for injuries.
Yep, everything.
You don't even know. You got to keep swinging. The upside of picking players in these last 2 rounds it's way higher than what you're getting, even if you think you're getting an elite kicker or a defense. So
it's such an oxymoron.
Yeah,
an elite kicker.
Yeah, you're like, there's no such thing, Dwayne. Like, just stop.
He was the K1.
Thank God you told me. I would have just looked like an idiot.
I should have just let you.
We could have had a good laugh. Yeah, it would have. It's still. Hey,
I'd be like, can you please explain your process?
I make mistakes, so it's.
Explain your process. Why did you take the Chiefs?
Yeah, well, Dwayne's process around his tiers sound really great, but he sucks at drafting. He can't.
We're all
actionable.
And that's one of the things. Like when you're bouncing from site to site, Trevor's make me crack up. When you're bouncing site to site, that's the most important thing, right? Read the rules, folks. And as simple as it sounds, it happens to the best of us. It happened to me last year. Like I was in a league, and it wasn't a cheap league, and I missed the fact that you could make waiver pickups all the way through the end of the season. And I spent my money on the final, what I thought was the final week, and wasn't able to make any more selections. It ended up costing me $20,000 because Chad Schroeder picked up Chicago defense the final week.
You beat us by it. Chad Schroeder picked up whoever was the perfect pickup, because that's what he freaking does, and it's maddening.
And so he beats Dave and I by half a point, and Chicago put up like 26.5 points or whatever it was. I'm not salty at all, if you can't tell. And it was, it was a difference. The half a point, 26 points of defense, we would have picked him up had we had $1, right? But we didn't even have $1. Chad picks him up for $1, and it wins the overall in that week.
Man, there's so many edges. Things you're saying right now get me so excited, and people think it's complete nerd stuff. But like, look, I play in a lot of leagues, but you know what? You can bet your ass, anyone in this league with me right now, I will know how much money you have in FAB. I will know every week. And I look at a lot of teams, but I'm going to look at it. And I get towards the end of the season, and I'm figuring out, well, 8 teams are at this. These other 2 teams have this much money. This team has this much money. This team has $1,000. I've got 400, but all the other teams have 200. Okay, and I want to max bid somebody. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna throw it out there at 195. I'm gonna throw it out there actually at everything. I'll just go over yours, so I make sure that I get him, the player that I want. So there's strategy in every level of this game. There's strategy every level.
Who the hell took?
You have to maximize every edge.
God damn you, Kolschling! You took. Oh my God! You took Durant, really? Round 19 snipes just hit different, man.
Yeah, that's when you get sniped on a player like that, it hits different. It really does.
Really,
and I have it happen too. It can send you in a real damn tailspin, I'll tell you.
Yeah, it's my queue just got decimated. I got 30 seconds to fill it. All right, let's. I don't have to count squares. Let's see, 9, 7. Okay, I need another receiver, anyways. All right, 2 in here. I like. Oh man, I'm really upset with you right now, Jack. I'm not happy with you. All right, I'll take a little upside shot there on that pick. Man, my queue got decimated there.
Well, you gave somebody that gives you a shot early in the season with Washington. That's not a bad pick.
Yeah, I like him more in best ball, quite frankly, but
yeah, I agree. But where you're getting him here,
especially
he doesn't hit any of the breakout metrics that we want. But it's one of those Lloyd Christmas. So you're saying there's a chance. That's all I'm telling you, Billy.
You're telling me there's a chance. I love that movie.
Me too.
I still quote it today.
Yeah, we're boomers, or as you said before the pod, like Goonie kids. Like when we love that. Like when my kids say something like, "I'll still use the chunk," thing. Whenever he gets there and they do the bowling ball and it rolls down, I'll be like, nerd alert.
Rocky Road.
Yeah, yeah.
They filmed that movie.
I like the late Taysom Hill pick. Oh, look at this Barrios. So I just got sniped. Barrios, man, look, he's buried right now, but man, underlying data points on Barrios look good. And so as a guy like in a draft like this, who knows? Like, what if Corey Davis goes down? What if Elijah Moore goes down? Garrett Wilson. All of a sudden, Barrios has shown that he can be, a nice player. So again, not on a great off, and we're super late here. We're around 20, but giving yourself shots, yourself shots to let things happen in training camp.
I'll let you. You're the guest. I'm going to let you take this one. Kev Wheeler says, "I'll bite." Who's Durant? You want to go through his metrics? You probably have them all pulled.
No, you go ahead. You're probably bigger on him than me.
Mine's gonna be a lot shorter.
Ian is our guy on Durant. Ian, honestly, I wasn't really paying attention to him, and Ian started talking about him. So
the reason I like him, one, is because we've never really had a number 2 in this offense who has, come to fruition and has kind of, the cream hasn't rose to the top per se. And we're expecting this massive workload for Najee, but let's face it, running back is one of the most injury-prone positions, right? And somebody's going to have to step up, and we just haven't seen that on this offense. Watching his tape, it just, to me, I don't have the metrics pulled up. I don't have the reasons, but I'm more of a tape guy than I am an analytical guy. And watching it, he just popped off on the tape to me. And I'm looking at it, and I say I liked what he was able to do in games, and it's just one of those things that you look at it and say, he has it. And I can't describe it outside of that. It's sometimes a player either has it or they don't have it. And you can just tell by the way when you're watching games. Maybe it's because he's comped to Darrington Evans, and I've kind of been a Darrington Evans stan. It just hasn't ever happened.
I was too. I was too. And again, like, he just checked the metrics. He was, for me, he hit boxes, that I want. Damn it. Okay. I just got
double sniped
here. Yeah.
Round 19 and 20 snipes. That's all we need. Right. But you look at so I just want to go through his kind of his college production. And so he saw a pretty heavy workload in his senior year. He saw 255 touches, 1,241 yards in college, 11 touchdowns. He also was able to catch the ball. So 27 receptions in his senior year, 250 receiving yards. So he's shown both capable of not just a rusher, but also a pass catcher. And that's what we want to see from, fantasy bats, especially this late in drafts where you're getting him in round 19.
Archetype. That's what we were just talking about. Absolutely.
So it's, one of the reasons
they have more outs, folks. If you play poker, the more ways you can be on the field, the more outs you have. Yeah. I mean, dude, well, you know how it goes. If you're on a sucky team and you're not the passing down back, you're not playing. So, I mean, it insulates you from game scripts. It insulates you from, sucky teams and things like that.
Well, we flew through that draft, hour and 37 minutes. We're now complete, 20 rounds. Let's just run through our builds. You went 2-5, 11-2. You started off with McCaffrey, Higgins, Fournette. You then came back around the fourth with Kyle Pitts. You took Godwin, which I want to talk about briefly before I let you go, and then Hunter Renfrow at 6'10", Lamar Jackson 7'3". You took Hunt at 8'10". You took Skyy Moore at 9'3", Rondale Moore at 10'10", Dotson 11'3". Then you take Darrell Henderson and Jamal Williams, Samuel and Fuller, over under on 12 games combined.
Between the two players, probably 3. I don't know.
Deshaun Watson.
Hey, I told you, I'm just drafting talent. I don't care if they're going to play. Damn it.
Deshaun Watson at the 16, Bourne, Chenault at 17, 18, Njoku. I love the Njoku pick at 19, and then Wilson at the 20.
Yeah. Technically, I like Hunter Henry more, but I just went ahead with the Watson stack because I just made a bet on Watson. So yeah, I'll walk through it. So, It's really, again, it comes down to how the draft fell. So I love getting CMC, at the 3 hole. Coming back, typically I would have, really thought about just taking Fournette in the second. But knowing the format, knowing how much the receivers get pushed up, T. Higgins is the last receiver in my wide receiver tier 1. So I took him, knowing Kamara and Fournette were still available. And the news around Fournette, even though he has shown up and he's in better shape, it's just kind of lingering in people's mind that Lenny's fat now, and so
Lenny.
I've just seen him falling Kamara, you got the legal situation. He falls. The backup plan was Travis Etienne. Or I could just pivot back to receiver. But I think the receivers kind of hit not a little bit. The receivers hit a drop off right there. And so I wanted to go ahead and make sure I got Higgins. Then I was able to get one of the two backs to fall back to me, and Kamara went right in front of me. And so I ended up with Fournette. And then coming back, the way the receivers were going, like, look, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown already gone in the 4th round over here, who I love, and I thought I'd have a shot at him. Marquise Brown, Deontay Johnson, DK Metcalf, Brandon Cooks, all gone in the 4th round because it's a very heavy wide receiver draft. Then Breece Hall goes 2 picks in front of me, who is the archetype I love, but Pitts makes it to me. And Pitts, I think I mentioned it earlier, could be the tight end 1 overall this season. That's how good he is. They just need to play him inside, not outside. And if he plays outside, he can still be the tight end, the 3rd best tight end. And I wanted to differentiate. I didn't want to take a wide receiver that I like but don't love. I want to take the tight end that could crush, that could just smash faces, smash skulls. I'm here to dominate. I'm not here to just look, I don't care. I want first or last. Obviously over here,
Ricky Bobby.
I want to be in the top 4 is what I want to be in. I just want to get in the playoffs over here. That's what I'm looking for. But then coming back, because the receivers all went so high, I just took the injury discount on Godwin. That was kind of my plan. Fine. If people are still going to be a little bit worried about Godwin, I'll go ahead and take it. I'm going to have to take it in the shorts a little bit early in the season. But by the end of the season, if he's ahead of schedule now, I got a better shot of Chris Godwin being where we want him to be, when I'm trying to cash a big check. And so that's when I wanted Godwin to be in my lineup. Pass heavy offense, elite quarterback. Coming back, Hunter Renfrow. Look, man, Hunter Renfrow, people I know, Devontae Adams is there. It definitely caps things. So last year, Hunter Renfrow was a wide receiver 1, technically a wide receiver 2, if you want to use like historical thresholds, points, not just did he finish as a wide receiver 1 in a specific season. But AFC, NFC West, back to this. 56% of the games projected for 50 points or more on Superbook are between these two divisions. So I want to keep, stacking it up like as much as I can. I want to give myself outs, for those big games. And with Renfrow, he's going to run a career high in routes. So even if he doesn't get the additional, if his target share comes down because of Devontae Adams, and it probably will, his targets per route run can still be really strong, and he's going to run more routes than he ever has because he now has Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels, guess what he does? He keeps the slot receiver on the field, even when they go to 2 tight ends. Even whenever they go to a fullback and a tight end, they just move them to the Z. Remember, Wes Welker. Remember, Julian Edelman. Heck, even Jacoby Myers. They don't come off the field. They're out there 85, 90% of the routes. Hunter Renfrow's never even been to 80% in his career. So he can offset what he's going to lose in a target share cap by being on the field to run more routes. And, oh, by the way, Devontae Adams is the most double-covered receiver in football. He also receives the most help coverage in football. So now you've got a guy that can just break down one-on-one matchups against bad coverage. You're getting the 3rd cornerback. You're getting a linebacker. You're getting a safety from the slot. So a lot of things I like about Hunter Renfrow. I think people are a tad too low, and I just love him as a wide receiver 3. Coming back, again, I wanted to keep the pressure and try to win different ways. There's so many people here that have already got like 6 receivers. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to have an elite quarterback. I've got an elite tight end. So that kind of gives me to start, right? I'm looking at McCaffrey and Fournette. Then I've got my receivers sitting with Higgins, Godwin, Renfrow, but I've got Pitts and I've got Jackson to help offset what may happen with the flex. Coming back, I really wanted James Cook, but I love Kareem Hunt just as much. Kareem Hunt, man, just a freaking elite player. And people like this is 1 year removed from last year when he was like a 5th round pick. And now people let him slide to round 8 and 9. Still the same player. Was scoring 17 freaking fantasy points per game last year before he got hurt in the first 6 weeks. Splitting time with Nick Chubb. Like the dude's just a badass. Then what if he gets traded? Like there's a chance this guy gets traded. They've talked about moving him. What if tomorrow we woke up and Kareem Hunt's on the Bills? He's a 1st round pick. I promise you. He will be a 1st round pick in fantasy drafts because people, how good he is. He's a top 5 running back.
You look at what he did in the Chiefs, and he was a monster.
He's phenomenal. As much as I love James Cook, Kareem Hunt's a better player. Like we know he's an elite player. So there's an out there. If something happens with Nick Chubb, there's an out. They've also talked about moving Dearness Johnson, right? So we could still really have more of a 2-player committee. Later, I did circle back with Deshaun Watson. I also got Njoku, so I kind of set up a little bit of a stack that if I happen to be right on Watson and something happens to Lamar, typically I don't take another quarterback. But if I do, it has to be a super high upside quarterback that tells me I built an advantage at quarterback here. Other people are probably going to beat me at my 2nd flex spot. How do I make sure I keep it? And that's the way I'm thinking. And the only player that can do that down there is Deshaun Watson. You could argue Justin Fields is the one other that you could take. But if Watson's a miss and he's suspended, fine. I'll cut his ass. I got to pick up a kicker or a defense anyway in week 1, Billy. Exactly. So it may be Deshaun Watson if he's gone. So I'll just kind of wrap this up. So you heard how I started the draft. So Kareem Hunt is going to be a flex player for me, but upside for more. I had to pound the receivers. And I love what you can do right here. I go with Skyy Moore. I go with Rondell Moore. Rondell Moore, 2nd-round pick last year. We've heard all offseason. All we've heard is how they're going to actually – Christian Kirk's gone. He's going to have near every down role. Like the Cardinals use they have 3 or 4 wide receivers on the field as much as any team in the league. So Rondell Moore is going to get to be out there more. We know the talent's there. They've just got to open up the game plan. They can't just use him around the line of scrimmage. So there's questions, but still young, explosive talent. Jahan Dotson, a 1st-round draft pick. How many rounds is he going after all these other 1st-round draft picks? I know it. His college profile wasn't as good. I know. But NFL draft capital is the number one thing, and people are allowing this guy to go 3 and 4 rounds after the other 1st-round receivers come off the board. Like Chris Olave, yeah, I like him more. But he's going 4 rounds ahead of Jahan Dotson. Like, so there's just a disconnect. It's a market inefficiency that I like to capitalize on. Then I wanted to come back and give myself a chance for a big flex player later in the season. Went with Darrell Henderson. Again, back to the AFC, NFC West thing. We've seen Henderson. If all of a sudden you got Cam Akers gone for any reason, like we're going to rank him as an RB1 every week in a great offense. So like that's all I'm doing there with Henderson. And there's a chance like it's still a split backfield like that. There's a chance that he and Akers is not just Akers getting 60-70% of the work. We already talked about Jamal Williams earlier, but I think if you have a situation where all of a sudden DeAndre Swift's out for 3 weeks, Jamal Williams might surprise us with RB1 potential. He's an every down back. Then at the end, just all about explosive playmakers. Curtis Samuel, Will Fuller, Kendrick Bourne, great yards per route run, targets per route run, yards after catch, all career highs last year. Don't know if it'll continue. Really don't. But he at least flashed something. Laviska Shenault, same way. Buried right now, probably on a depth chart. But despite all the things people hate about him, he still actually flashed in a lot of metrics that say this kid might still be able to play. David Njoku, similar. And then very end, Cedric Wilson showed a little bit of that last year. He would obviously need an injury to one of the guys in front of him. Like Cedric Wilson ain't doing jack. If you've got, Jalen Waddle healthy, you've got Tyreek Hill healthy, you got, some of these other guys, that Chase Edmonds who we talked about. But he's a good enough player that if something happens in the preseason, I'm fine. If not, he's going to get cut, to pick up my kicker or my defense.
Awesome. Well, thanks for breaking down your draft for the folks. Thank you also for tuning in to the podcast and for drafting with me tonight. It was always a pleasure to have you on. Always, nice to get your insight and your analysis on the players. Always respect your opinions and love to hear you break it down. So
you too, man. You too. It's a joy. I love getting to come on. This is my favorite thing, honestly. Drafting. This is why I do what I do, because ultimately it all comes down to this. There's nothing I love more, like as far as like a hobby or just something I like than drafting a fantasy football team. It's my app. I dream about it. I love it. I love the strategy.
Why do you think I do like 300 times a year?
Dude, that's why I get overweight. That's why I do too many too. And then, I end up like, damn it, my eyes are bleeding. I do all these waiver wires. I'm in week 12
Tuesday
now.
Sucks.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. And so, yeah, man, I'm with you, but this is the moment. And to get to do it and talk through with someone else on not just player takes, but the way you're thinking about where the values are, like what are the strategies? And there's so many layers to it. I just love it. Like, poker is the other thing that I love like this, but I haven't played as much lately. And it's the same kind of things that draw me to poker, right?
Yes.
Data, odds, but then strategy, thinking multiple steps ahead. It's not checkers, it's a chess, and everybody can there's different ways to win. There's not just one way to do it. So I'm just fascinated by it, man. And I love it. And getting to hear someone like you share, it just makes me sharper. And it also makes me think, okay, am I right on this player? Am I wrong on this player? Heck, not just you and me being in these drafts with people that are willing to draft this early. There's a lot of smart people that are very serious about this. And I like looking at their builds and be like, okay, I wouldn't have done that, but what am I not thinking? What am I not? Am I missing something? This person might just be way freaking smarter than me. So I just love it.
It's always nice to take a look at how people put together teams, and it's that reverse engineering again, right? And you said, I wouldn't have thought to do that, but it actually worked out, right? Or hey, what had happened if he wasn't able to get that guy? How would that have affected the rest of his draft? So again, I'm going to review the board.
So for example, taking the Pitts and taking Jackson, the reason I felt comfortable doing it is because I get some really flat tiers. I'm not as high as most people on Lazard, Marquise Valdez-Scantling, so I was fine letting them pass, but really high on a group of players that I knew I could get multiple from. And that's why I also went ahead and went Kareem Hunt when it got back to me in the 8th, because I knew I had a group of about 15 players that I was looking at, and I think they're in a very flat spot where you can manage to pull off multiple. What you don't want to do is thread the needle so tightly on your draft plan that you're like, well, I'm going to take this player here and this player here because I know in 13th round this receiver is going to be here. The key word was, I said this receiver. You need an archetype. You need a group of receivers that you like for the right reasons because of what historically has worked for fantasy. And when you find those pockets, that's what allows you to say, okay, I'm going to pivot, because I felt really good about coming back and just drilling multiple of Skyy Moore, Rondell Moore, Jahan Dotson, Garrett Wilson, Chase Claypool was in my bucket. Jacoby Myers was in my bucket. Tim Patrick was even in the bucket. So there's a lot of guys there. My strategy was, I'm going to get 2 to 3 of those. I'm going to go ahead and take Lamar Jackson here. I'm going to go ahead and secure Kareem Hunt, give myself the chance for, some upside, at my flex spot later in the year. Then I'm gonna pound these receivers. And so you got to know where those spots are. And I didn't know exactly where they would go here from ADP, so I was kind of just trying to glance at it. But I know overall, like, because I play enough on the other sides, it's not going to be totally drastically different, right? So I felt pretty good about being able to get multiple. Sorry, I know I went on another tangent there, but like, I could talk about this stuff all night.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm sitting here just enjoying listening to you speak and looking at the board simultaneously. It's kind of mesmerizing. Like, will you read me bedtime stories? Like, just read me draft picks.
Look over Billy starting to go to sleep. He's got a little dream.
Another person I really enjoy listening to is like Sigmund. And Sigmund he has that.
Oh, Bloom, man.
It's like he's like the Morgan Freeman voice of the NFL world, right? It's like that.
And I love Sigmund because of what we've been talking about here. He just likes to ask questions. He just likes to think, he's willing to think outside the box. He's willing to say, well, what if? And he and I, we don't always agree on everything, but man, I like the fact that
that's some of the better discussions though.
Exactly. So
if you always agree on things, it's a short conversation.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Dwain, for tuning in. Everybody,
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
Make sure to follow Dwain. Is it at Dwain McFarland on Twitter? Is that correct?
Yeah. DWAINMCFARLAND.
I pulled it up right there for everybody at the end, so you can see it there. At Dwain McFarland on Twitter. Again, fire takes on the daily basis. It's pretty much like getting an article a day from Dwain on Twitter. You can just always know you're going to get some valuable information in the fantasy football world. So thanks again for coming on, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in. We will update you for next week's schedule. I'm going to be updating projections as well. A lot of people have been asking for individual rankings. So I'm going to be posting those over to the Full-Time Fantasy site shortly with the demand as of late. So we will see you all back here next week, folks. Have a good night, and thanks for tuning in.